Trustee O'Keefe, here. Trustee Riddle.
Here.
Trustee Summer.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here. At this time, we have 3 sets of minutes, draft minutes to review. The first is to review the drafts of the special meeting September 19th, 2022. And I'm going to do them all together, and then if there are any questions, you all can ask for each of the respective set of minutes. So the first is September 19th, 2022, and it was a basic meeting in terms of to review the ordinance and the candidates in terms of interviewing them. The second meeting was September 20th, 2022, and it was the regular board minutes. And then there's one more, isn't there? Just have 2.
2 sets of 19th and
Yeah.
the regular meeting.
Just have 1 set, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then both sets, because we had 2 different interviews. We had one at 9 in the morning and the other at 5 p.m. because we interviewed 13 candidates. So that was a full day. So you've got 3 sets of meeting minutes. Can we have a motion to approve the 3 sets of minutes?
I can do that.
Okay.
I move approval of the September 19th, 2022 special meetings minutes and September 20th, 2022 regular board meeting minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, let's go. Are there any questions regarding the first set of the September 19th, 2022 minutes for the special meeting? Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Any questions regarding the second set for September 19th, 2022? Okay.
Questions?
Any for the regular board meeting September 20th, 2022?
No.
Okay.
No questions.
Being no questions, can we have a roll call?
Yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Fishman.
Yes.
Trustee Nealon.
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe, yes. Trustee Riddle.
Yes.
Trustee Summer.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald.
Yes. Okay. At this time, I would like to read ordinance number 2022-23-206. It's the ordinance filling a vacancy. Trustee Wolf resigned his seat on the board effective August 1st, 2022. The resignation has created a vacancy that will be filled by the appointment of Renee Cox until the next regular election in April 2023. So I will read the vacancy. I'll read it. Okay. Ordinance number 2022-23-206, ordinance filling a vacancy, Stuart Wolf vacancy. Whereas Stuart Wolf was previously appointed as a library trustee for a term which expires in April 2023, and whereas Stuart Wolf resigned from the board effective July 31st, 2022, and whereas following a resignation, a vacancy in the office of library trustee shall be declared by the library board, whereas the library trustees by ordinance number 2022/23-205 adopted August 16, 2022, declared a vacancy in the office of library trustee, and whereas vacancy shall be filled by appointment of the library trustees until the next regular library election, now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Library Trustees of the Wilmette Public Library District that the library trustees appoint Renee Cox to fill the vacancy until the next regular election of the library trustees in April 2023. This ordinance is effective immediately. So may we have is there a motion to approve?
I move approval of ordinance number 2022/23-206, an ordinance filling a vacancy.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
Sure, I have a comment.
Yes.
I want to obviously congratulate, first of all, Renee for the role that she will be taking on. I think I also want to comment on the 13, just in total, the 13 individuals that were interested and candidates for our interview. It was an impressive group of people. I really actually, and I'm sure many of you share these sentiments, but they all saw the vacancy in library communications, email, postings. They're super involved in the community. They were lovers of the library for many years, and they all had children who also were lovers of the community and the library community, and that was just super impressive and very, very heartwarming. I hope that if they're hearing this evening, that they know how much we valued their gifts and their talents that they were willing to offer our board and the library and the community, and that they hopefully will seek future roles on the library board when there are vacancies. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? It was a hard choice, but we are glad that you're here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So can we have a roll call for the vote?
Yes.
Since it was moved by Trustee Fishman and seconded by Trustee Nealon.
Trustee Fishman.
Yes.
Trustee Nealon.
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe, yes. Trustee Riddle.
Yes.
Trustee Summer.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald.
Yes. The motion passed unanimously. And at this point in time, we would like to swear in Trustee Cox, the future Trustee Cox. Will be sworn in. And we will have our secretary.
Oath of office. Oath of office, library trustee. I, Renee Cox. I, Renee Cox. Do solemnly swear or affirm. Do solemnly swear or affirm. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Illinois. And the Constitution of the State of Illinois. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of library trustee. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of library trustee. According to the best of my ability. According to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
You may come and sit down and join us. And thank you, Trustee O'Keefe, for swearing her in.
How convenient. Do you have a
Okay. This is the time for public comment. For meeting attendees who have signed the visitor public comment registration form and who wish to address the Board of Trustees may do so at this time. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? Being none, we are ready to present. Going once, twice? Okay. At this point in time, we will have a presentation regarding our audit. Do you want to do the introduction?
Go ahead.
Okay.
We are joined this evening by Brad Porter, representing Lauterbach and Amon, our auditor. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brad Porter, and I'm here on behalf of Lauterbach and Amon as one of our principals at the firm. I just so happen to oversee the library's financial statement audit process. So thank you all for having me here this evening. Before I go any further, accomplishing an audit is no small victory, so I would like to celebrate with you and thank those that played a role in getting this audit to the finish line here this evening. So John, Anthony, the team, we greatly appreciated the joint efforts that it's required to get to this point. You've treated us amazing in our time with you thus far, and the audit has always made a priority within the site. So thank you very much for your efforts. There are 3 pieces of required communication that we issue at the conclusion of each audit process that I'll briefly be discussing here this evening with you. 2 of which are in front of you. Does everybody have a copy? extras on the end of the table here. So I'm actually going to start with the third piece of required communication. There's a paper copy that Anthony has in front of him. If you're interested in some light reading material, certainly feel free to borrow it from him. But ultimately, we are required in accordance with Statement Auditing Standard number 114 to state whether or not we had any disagreements or difficulties that we had encountered throughout our audit process. I'm very happy to report in the body of that letter you'll find no such difficulties or disagreements noted. We'll jump right into the annual financial report, and that is going to be the thicker of the two bound documents that you have in front of you here this evening. Starting with page 1. I know there's a lot of material here, and I will do my best here this evening just to keep it short and to the point, covering some of the more important areas. So page 1 is certainly one of those important areas. This is what we call our independent auditor's report. In addition to stating your responsibility for the financial statements as management, which is to ultimately make sure that your auditors are provided a clean set of financial statements to work off of, we go on to state what our responsibility is, and that is to opine or generate an opinion on the financial statements that are provided to us. I'm very happy to report that for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022, we've issued what is known as an unmodified opinion, which is the cleanest form of opinion that any entity can receive in the governmental space. Ultimately, an unmodified opinion states that as your auditors, we believe the financial statements are free from any material misstatement, and that there are sound internal controls in place over the numerous internal control functions. We do walkthroughs of cash receiving, disbursements, payroll, financial reporting. The list goes on to ultimately make sure that we can generate this opinion here this evening. So congratulations. Turning to page 5. I certainly must admit that I know the financial statements sometimes are not the most easy to understand and interpret when you're accustomed to seeing, one fund on your treasurer's report, cash in, cash out. We come in and then we diversify it into multiple different columns. So I understand it's certainly complicated at times. So I wanted to point out page 5 through 11, which is going to be your management discussion and analysis section. This is going to give you a narrative overview of the fiscal year. There's some charts, some graphs, a lot of things that are much easier to understand than a statement of net position or some of those complicated Gatsby terms that they throw at us. So definitely think this is one of the sections that you as the board should invest a lot of your time and energy in. Turning to page 17, just a couple of quick financial highlights for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. Page 17 is what we call our statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance. That is exactly one of those complicated terms that they use. This is basically your income statement for the fund level financial statement. So I just wanted to touch on, for the sake of our presentation here this evening, the general fund and special reserves fund. Ultimately, this year we had an operating loss of $104,000 for our general fund. You'll find that about midway through the page, there's that line item titled Deficiency of Revenues Under Expenditures of about $104,000, as I had mentioned. That's prior to our transfer out of $1.8 million to our special reserves fund, ending the year with about just over $7.1 million in our general fund and accumulated fund balance. On the special reserve fund front, we did have $1.5 million of capital outlay expenditures this year. Offsetting those expenditures were the $1.8 million transfer in from general fund for a net increase in our special reserve fund balance of about $278,000, ending the year just over $5.8 million in fund balance. Now, moving on to the third piece of required communication that we issue, that is what we call our management letter, and that is the second bound document that you'll have in front of you. Give everyone a moment to switch gears. Now, the primary purpose of our management letter is to convey anything that really falls outside the scope of the actual audit material. And that can be things like internal control weaknesses or recommendations, best practices policies that we see across a lot of our library clients, upcoming accounting pronouncements in the instance of a couple comments here. So this management letter document is broken up into two sections. We have current recommendations, which would be anything that was directly stemming from our FY22 audit. And we have prior recommendations, which would be anything that had been issued in FY 2021 and previous. providing a status update on those comments. You'll see a little status paragraph for each of those comments. So just walking through these very quickly, the one current recommendation that we had was purely for transparency purposes. It's in every management letter comment that we issue, so I want you to rest assured that this is solely for transparency alone. This is with regards to an upcoming change for IT arrangements. It's very likely that this GASB standard number 96 won't even apply to your organization, but it is included just to give you a little bit of heads up that this is coming down the pipeline for fiscal year 2023. Now the 3 prior recommendations, the first of which was our outstanding check policy, and I'm happy to report that the library took action on implementing the outstanding check policy in accordance with the state's Unclaimed Property Act. So you'll see that in the status paragraph that this comment has been implemented. It will not be repeated in the future. So it will ultimately fall off of next year's management letter entirely. The second comment was GASB ED7, which was for leases. Ultimately, that was applicable for fiscal year 2022. Changes the way in which leases are accounted for in your audit. Happy to report you had nothing that was applicable to GASB ED7. So you'll see that comment was also implemented. And the final comment, lots of good news here, keep it going. So this is with our capital asset policy that, again, the board took action on approving that policy within the fiscal year. So if all goes well, all 3 of those prior recommendations will fall off next year. The one comment this year was purely for transparency purposes. So I must say this is a very impressive management letter. With that, that's all I've got. I'm happy to field any questions, comments, or concerns.
I just have one question. And I meant to ask this before. It's just minor. I have no problem with the audit. On page 8, there's on the program revenues, it says charges for services. What is that?
There are a lot of accounts that get included within the charges for service account. I don't have like that breakdown in front of me ultimately.
Is it just like miscellaneous things?
It can be
It just kind of was, it's not material, but I didn't know what it was. I'm sorry, I should have probably given you guys a heads up, but I didn't.
Bear with me for a minute.
It's page 8.
I'll probably have to get back to you on that.
I think that's kind of,
Is
John,
that
do you have any-
Kenilworth?
Oh, maybe it is. Is it Kenilworth?
I think so.
Okay.
That was approximately the dollar amount of the Kenilworth
Okay.
service revenue, so it's very likely that that's.
Because that wouldn't be
within
property
category.
taxes or any replacement. Okay,
Exactly. I know, I was trying to do process of elimination and say,
Okay.
what amounts.
Thank you.
Reported down below.
And since it's revenue, that makes sense.
Mhm.
it does,
Exactly.
yes.
Yep.
And I just, yep.
I had a couple items. I wanted to, first of all, say thank you so much. I think what I noticed kind of overall in this report is that, we're getting a lot more explanation, and therefore, I think a lot of education, which I think we can benefit from as a board. So I really appreciated that. I had a few comments and questions on the recommendation letter. I wanted to clarify if the recommendations were, or the findings, these initial comments, they were found previously and during the current year-end audit procedures. So does that mean that they were this was a repeat comment? Or do you mean that, that's what I'm sorry, previously and during our current year-end audit procedures, we noted that, that's the first also for the capital asset policy, previously and during our current year-end audit procedures.
Yeah, if you were to look back at your prior year management letter comment, it would say probably just during our current year-end procedures. So with this being our prior recommendations, it's stating that that was applicable likely to FY 20 and 21, and then the library has taken action and implemented it in fiscal 22.
Oh, got it.
Yep.
Got it. So it's
It's kinda
during,
confusing.
yeah,
It's a little
sorry,
bit
yeah, because
confusing.
I was like, I don't remember seeing this
Yeah.
as a previous comment. Good to know. I wanted to ask if you see this size of a management team taking care of, this level or this size again. more for in terms of internal controls. You know, it's hard to kind of have a separation of duties with such a small staff, and, you know, ideal internal controls is that, you know, there are several individuals, you know, checking and balancing things. So wanted to see what your thoughts were on, or any best practices.
Yeah, we are certainly, one thing we pride ourselves on is not issuing management letter comments for segregation of duties when resources and other measures allow for 3 people in a department or 2 people in a department. We then increase our level of like risk, we call it in the audit world, of making sure that we're really looking at internal controls to make sure there's no dual processing of certain tasks and things like that. And had we found anything during those processes, and oftentimes we do, those things would be documented in the management letter. So I think the library's doing a good job of making sure that where possible or where necessary, you're taking the right action.
Awesome, thank you.
But in the past, a lot of it was reduced because we're fine-free. And that was where a lot of the cash would have been received before we went fine-free in the past, which was
Yeah,
one
most
of
of
the
our-
letters that came up all the time.
Yeah, most of our revenue testing is via property taxes and all the things that, you know, for the revenue streams that you're accustomed to seeing. But yeah, you're certainly not the only library that has gone fine-free for a while here, so.
But like payment of checks is kind of more of like, you know, that's that level of payment of
Yes,
checks,
yeah.
that that was a comment
Yeah,
here, the
first thing we
write-off.
do in any audit processes have the team fill out a detailed internal control inquiry where we're reviewing processes, we're cross-referencing that with what actually happens, because what you say happens and what actually happens can, trust me, from times not be the case, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Well, should anything else come up in your review of the 150 pages of the audit report, certainly feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And so what's been put on there is trustees received, the final audit will be published on the WPLD website now, correct? So it should be up in the next couple of days.
Great.
Okay, at this time, we will turn it over to Trustee Summer for the financial reports for September 2022.
Great. So as you can see for the quarter ending 9/30/2022, as John indicated in the notes, they're running slightly over budget as of the end of September. At the same time, you know, with the changes to the general fund investments, the library received almost $8,000 in interest this month alone, and are already at about 75% of budgeted income for interest income. John also included in the notes about some of the checks and disbursements. If anybody had any questions, we could talk about those. I didn't find anything out of the ordinary. As it noted at the end of the month, there is a net loss of about $1.5 million, with a loss due to operations of 1.4. The difference has to do with probably payouts for the liability fund or some of the other special funds. No special revenue disbursements. As he noted, this is a result of not receiving yet any tax revenues, but we continue to have adequate funds in our max safe account and checking account to meet our contractual obligations. Does anybody have any questions on the checks? Just anything in the checks and disbursements? The only other comment is, I met with John and Anthony this morning in regards to the audit and adjustments to the library's books to ensure that the general ledger balances, or internal documents, agree with the audit. Assets in total agree, there's no problem. It's just kind of, there's some of them are sitting in the wrong buckets, and it was part of the journal entries that's on the back of, was included with the audit. So that being said, I'm not going to give you a general fund or special reserve fund balance update until we have, the journal entries are included, and then we'll know a more accurate number. Let's see. But the number included in the financial projections today are the amounts from the initial draft of the audit, so those numbers are correct. So what's in the audit and in the levy document and the projections are correct. Does anybody have any questions on that? No? Yeah, so I can't remember if I said this. So as of 6/30, as indicated in the audit, the general fund reserves were at $7.1 million, which includes the Rutherford trusts, and the special reserve fund balance was at 5.8 million as of June 30th. Does anybody have any questions on any of the documents?
I think that was part of discussion in terms of summary of finance committee, wasn't it?
I'm going to talk about it again.
Okay, gotcha, because in terms of treasurer's purpose, so September 2022, so yeah,
Yep.
okay.
But I don't have a general fund or special reserve fund balance number as of that date.
Okay.
All right, does that, anyone like to have a motion for the bills and salaries?
I move approval of the bills and salaries check detail for September 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Any questions? Sorry, that's my job. No questions?
No questions.
No questions. Roll call.
May I do roll?
Roll call.
Thank you. Trustee Cox.
Yes.
Trustee Fishman.
Yes.
Trustee Nealon.
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe, yes. Trustee Riddle.
Yes.
Trustee Summer.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The next action item before we get to talk about the summary of the Finance Committee are the holidays. And so you will see with the holiday closings, there are three different categories. The first are the days that the library will be closed. The library will be closed 13 days. And the holidays that the Wilmette Library will be open, there's 5 of them. And then they will close early, 2 of those, July 3rd and November 22nd. Is there any discussion?
I actually have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, go ahead, go ahead. No, bank time. The definition of bank time.
It's a flexible holiday, so instead of, like, for Labor Day, for example, for being paid for that day off, a bank day, which are the ones that, like Martin Luther King Day, et cetera, the second group of holidays, since the library is open, we accommodate the schedules of the staff in order to sustain operations, so staff can flex their time anytime
Okay.
throughout the year with their bank days.
Okay.
And the bank days can roll over.
Oh, okay. From year to year.
Yes,
and roll
up
over.
to a total of 150 hours.
That's a good question. My question, does this coordinate with the schools, the Wilmette Public Schools?
District
There are
39.
several
District
school
39.
districts that the students go to.
What's
Besides
that?
Wilmette, you've got some in Avoca as well as some in Trier Township. Sometimes those holidays do not coordinate.
Okay, so forget it then.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We're generally open more than the schools. When the schools are out, we tend to be open. So, for example, that second group of holidays are typically days that the schools would be closed, but we're here. And they're busy days.
Absolutely.
And of those 13 days, 3 are unpaid holidays. Other questions?
My last one was, did you by any chance consider for the closed days noon instead of 5 p.m.? So July 3rd noon, the day before Thanksgiving noon instead of 5 p.m. I don't know if it was based on, like, kind of past need, past demand on those days. I know, like, finals sometimes are kind of right after Thanksgiving break, but I don't know
Yeah.
if it's used, a lot of people are off, and especially noon on the day before Thanksgiving. I don't know if that would be ever considered.
We certainly study trending in our circulation and door traffic. I think a 3-hour workday, I would maybe not advocate to even open if we were going to be open
Yeah,
for just 3 hours.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I would too.
Yeah.
I'd kind of consider that as well. Will the lockers by any chance be open and be available then in November?
24/7.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the only one I would probably, kind of consider getting a little more maybe feedback from is the day before Thanksgiving, possibly.
for travel purposes.
I don't know what you mean, Fina, could you, so it's.
So instead of it
the-
staying-
like closing at 5, but at 9 to 5, isn't that correct, Anthony?
Yes,
All
we're
right, so
open
maybe
9 to
not
5.
even being open, being closed
Oh,
entirely.
being closed all the time.
Or
Oh,
being
Not even be
closed
open that day.
at noon.
One of our goals is to serve the public, and a lot of times the day before the holiday, because the library might be closed for 2 days during, well, no, for Thanksgiving, they're only closed that one day. They're not closed the day after Thanksgiving.
Right.
A lot of people will come and get material for the holiday.
Well, that's why I was asking about the lockers. You know, if it's not, it's just something I was considering. I think the day before Thanksgiving is something that.
You know, I see your point, because we're traveling and we won't be here, but I do think that if you're in town and you're with your kids, you might want to be like running over, you have the kids, maybe you'd want to run over at 3 o'clock and say, oh my God, they're going to be home all day tomorrow. I want to get some movies or something. So maybe that would be kind of a thought as to why you might keep it till 5, just because, you know, like if, just, that may be, I mean, we won't be here, and I think people do travel, but I think
Yeah.
you might be. that
No,
might
of
be
course,
one
and if
reason.
those are the
I
reasons.
think there's a lot of
for it.
different scenarios that
Well, and I
people,
think
that
you-
families or people, or you're going out of town and or you want to book on tape or something like that. So,
I think your point is, you know, it's something that I would say, that one thing that's interesting is, see what the lockers effect has.
But
This-
you know, for the lockers, you've got to pre-plan
You do.
to get them, to get those lockers.
you're reserving a book,
You're
correct?
reserving a
You're
book
reserving a
in
book or a
advance
piece
as
of
opposed to
material,
coming to-
or a DVD or whatever.
That'd be interesting,
Isn't
just,
that
you know,
right?
when we talk, next time we
We'll
meet, just
see.
see what's the traffic after, on Thursday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday, yeah.
I would say anecdotally, the staff would tell us that the last hour before we close, before a holiday, is one of the busiest hours of that week.
Yeah.
That A lot of people
That's good
are
to know.
rushing in to
I'm
get their
used to doing
materials
that.
really quick, knowing that we're, you know, for the kind of purpose that Tracy was noting, that, you know, right before a holiday, there can be high demand for materials
Right.
to keep people
That's good to know.
occupied.
No, it's
So,
good to know.
yeah.
I didn't, that's nice.
Okay.
Can you clarify for me the difference between unpaid holiday and paid holiday, and for whom? And why some are paid and others aren't?
I don't know that I can explain the tradition of the unpaid holiday. The Sundays are not a regular kind of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday type of a day, so the Sundays have typically been an unpaid holiday. We don't have full-time staff that are typically scheduled on a Sunday, and therefore,
Though they would be hourly?
by tradition, they've been, yes, we've
Okay.
been just kind of handling those as an unpaid holiday.
You know, you'll
Oh, it's
find that this
interesting.
is consistent with, you know, I think, you know, a salaried job also. This was really consistent with paid and unpaid, and when I was working also with, you know, at a firm.
Interesting, though. I didn't look at that carefully in advance. So like Easter's on April Sunday, it's an unpaid holiday. Oh,
The Monday holidays, the day before is
That's right.
a Sunday that's unpaid, yes.
no, it's paid. Because the 24th is a Sunday and it's a paid holiday.
The Sunday before the
Day
Monday
before.
holiday is an unpaid holiday.
Except
Christmas
December
Eve.
24th.
Day before
Christmas
Christmas.
Those are not regularly a Monday holiday. So
I see
the
what you
regular
mean.
Monday holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, the Sunday before, we have traditionally been closed, and those are unpaid holidays.
I see.
Any other discussion or questions?
He thought this was it.
Okay. So since, let's see.
And I guess the point that I would make here that we haven't discussed is the more operative piece is that we need to hold an in-person staff development day, and we haven't done that here for a while. That is the TBD that is listed there. It has typically been held sometime in, we'll call it the first quarter of the calendar year. So we don't have a date for that yet. We are planning to do that this time. We feel that we can accommodate the staff in a safe environment now to be able to hold a meeting for everyone to get together. So as we move forward with that, I will keep you apprised, and then we'll obviously let the public know when we get closer to announcing that date. Thank you for your continued support of the Staff Development Day.
Just remind me, when you have been able to meet in person for staff development, is that on-site or off-site?
On-site. Typically, it has been on-site. Yep, in this room.
Any other questions or Comments? Can we have a motion? I don't think we got a motion on this one to approve. the
I move
holiday
approval
closings.
of the holiday closings for calendar year 2023 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved by trustee O'Keefe and seconded by trustee Fishman. Any additional discussion? Can we have a roll call? Trustee O'Keefe.
Trustee Cox?
Yes?
Trustee Fishman?
Yes.
Trustee Nealon?
Yes.
Trustee O'Keefe, yes. Trustee Riddle?
Yes.
Trustee Summer?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we move to the Finance Committee, summary of the Finance Committee meeting. So, take it
right.
away.
Settle on in, people. So prior to the Finance Committee meeting last week, Director Austin, John Risco, and myself met via Zoom with Andrew Kim, the consultant, to review preliminary models of the 2022 levy, which will affect the 2024 fiscal year, and ensure the numbers including the current year budget, investment income, assumed rates of increase were accurate. Keep in mind, these were preliminary numbers because we hadn't had the audit yet. In general, it's the board's policy to prudently watch the library's level of reserves and to bring our reserves in line with our financial stewardship goal of having approximately 6 months to a year of the library's annual operating budget in the general fund reserve. In the recent years, the library has operated at a deficit with deficit spending and has budgeted for the next year to continue to do so. At the same time, it's necessary to maintain some reserves to meet the library's operational obligations, especially when receipt of tax proceeds is delayed, like in the current year. As a result of having adequate reserves, the library will not need to incur any interest charges or have any other financial charges for borrowing in order to meet our obligations this year until the tax proceeds are received. Included in today's packet is an introduction prepared by Mr. Kim to the financial projection model, which includes assumptions that were made with the model that recommended by the Finance Committee we're presenting to the board today. Keep in mind that the models reviewed by the Finance Committee included preliminary numbers, in particular, the general fund and special reserve fund balances. The attached updated models, which we had with this, for both a 3.5% and a 4.99% levy, included updated amounts, which do agree with the audited financial statements, and which were presented earlier. In order to be consistent in all the models reviewed by the Finance Committee and attended by all the board members, except for even our board member almost, Renee, included a transfer of $500,000 from the general fund to the special reserve fund. This does not mean that the board will ultimately recommend this transfer. Also included in the board packet tonight was a narrative I put together in regards to the highlight of the 3 models based on the preliminary numbers. This packet tonight didn't include any sort of a flat levy. Packet tonight does not include the preliminary analysis of a flat levy for 1 year, then 2% year after, as we reviewed in the Finance Committee, because this was a scenario we did not consider from the Finance Committee to bring to the board as a whole. However, the 3.5% levy for 2 years and then 2% thereafter is included tonight. It indicates that the general fund will be depleted down to 0 in the fiscal year 2032 and 50% in 2026-2027, which would be basically 4 years. And Mr. Kim highlighted these numbers in his attached models. With the 4.99% levy for 2 years and then 2% for each year thereafter, the general fund will be depleted in 2036 and at 50% in 2028-29. And these numbers were also highlighted in the model. Keep in mind, this is just a model. It's just some way, it's a starting point. It is not the be-all, end-all. For the Finance Committee, we did not have Mr. Kim prepare a formal projection showing a decrease in the levy. Just looking at the results above, it was evident that due to inflation, the cost of all goods and services, healthcare costs, energy costs, as well as increase to personnel, we didn't even consider a decrease in the levy. Therefore, to model a decrease would deplete our general fund too quickly, and could lead the library to possibly needing a tax referendum, issue bonds, which is something that may be very favorable to the residents of the community. In all the models, the rate of decline for the special reserve fund is the same. The models all assume that after the current year, 22-23, no transfers to the general fund, from the general fund to the special reserve fund will be done. All the models include projects from the capital reserve study for maintaining and repairing the library, and that model shows the special reserve fund being depleted in 2034, 2035. Therefore, based on my understanding, the majority of the Finance Committee recommends that the board consider a levy of 4.99%, just slightly under 5, for the fiscal year for 2022, which will affect fiscal year end 2024. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one clarification.
Yes.
With the 3.5%, would you be able to, I know the answer to this, but would you
Sure.
be able to clarify for the board and for those listening why we chose 3.5%? It wasn't an arbitrary number. It was actually, it was the employee, the rate.
That's a good question. It was the rate of increase of the largest item of our budget, which was personnel salaries. So the middle range would have been 2.5%. We felt it more prudent to look at 3.5%. It's a great question, Vina.
And then, just to clarify, if we did choose a scenario of a 3.5% increase over a flat or 0% increase, it appears that our general fund will be at 50% in 2027. And I just want to clarify, I feel as though maybe you said, did you say 2027?
Wait, for the flat or the 3.5?
The 3.5.
For the 3.5, with the updated model, I believe we'll be at 50% in year 2026/27. It's a good question. I'll just double check. Andrew did a good job highlighting. Did you look at the highlight?
Yes, I'm sorry, and I thought you said 2032 initially,
Oh,
Tracy, so I just wanted to be sure that I didn't hear you.
I probably misspoke.
Okay. So
I said, I know what I said, that the general fund will be depleted in 2032.
Oh, got it.
And 50% in 26/27. And I may have said that wrong.
That's exactly when I have it, yep,
Okay.
between 2026 and 27.
Yep.
So Tracy, that's a little different than when your narrative,
Yes.
because these have been
Narrative saying-
adjusted
And that was.
according to the audit.
Correct, because
Right,
the
okay.
numbers in the Finance Committee meeting were preliminary.
Preliminary, as you said. earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. just to-
And that also kind of goes to my discussion earlier about some number things that we're working with John to get them
To be
adjusted.
sure that,
To be,
right. It's all there, but it's
It's all
just-
there, and
of
it's all
course.
good, with plenty of money, but ensuring that it's all reflected in the proper bucket, as we will call it.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? Any comments?
Just generally, I think that it seemed our Finance Committee had an appetite to continue working with the policy that we set forth to operate the, general fund at a deficiency and, I'm sorry, not at a deficiency, to allow the general fund to cover deficiencies. And we didn't have an appetite for the depletion, in 5 to 6 years, let alone sooner if we were to do a 0% or flat levy and, decreasing it, we couldn't even consider. That wouldn't be fair to the.
Oh, yeah, even to future boards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To future boards, that's exactly right. Some of us won't be here during those years. We couldn't do that too.
Yeah.
And to Anthony and his staff, of course, as well.
And to the residents,
Mm.
and to the people of
The
Wilmette.
patrons.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right, but asking, you mean if we were to need to ask some type of
Yeah,
of
some type of-
shortfall?
yeah.
I get that.
Does anybody have any questions on the levy itself and the breakdown of the levy? If so, that will pass that to Anthony. The levy document?
Okay, so behind the models that were provided by PMA, you will see the first draft of our levy for this fall, which we are reviewing for the first time here this evening, and which we anticipate will be on the agenda at the November 15th board meeting for approval. So this draft is informed by our budget and appropriation ordinance from earlier this year. As you'll see, there are several funds that we do not levy for. Just to be clear, we do not levy for contingency. We do not levy for a transfer. And we do not levy for the Special Reserve Fund. The Special Reserve Fund is an accumulation of funds that is effectively our savings account. And so the levy does not inform that. There are special funds, just to make it a little bit more confusing. So there's the Special Reserve Fund, which is our savings that can only be used for capital purposes. And then there are our special revenue funds, or the special funds as I call them, which we do levy for. And those are three funds. There is the retirement fund, which includes our municipal retirement, IMRF, as well as Social Security. Those are both informed by a statute, as you see listed there. There's also our audit expense fund, and there's our liability fund. All of these three funds are affected by our fund balance policy that we have adopted and that we've been discussing this evening, with a goal to have 50% to 1 year of operating revenue in reserve in each of those funds. It should be noted that the numbers that you're seeing there, while they look largely similar to what we've done year over year, we have decreased the levy to our retirement line, that's item A, ever so slightly. That really closely aligns right there at about 470 is pretty close to what our annual expenditures are. If you were to look at your audit, you can see that that's pretty much what our expenses are. We have a healthy fund balance in the retirement line. We also have a relatively healthy balance in our audit line, so we're just levying for essentially what the cost of the audit is. On the other hand, the very last item, the liability insurance line, you may recall that in past fiscal years, we have had a general fund line of about $28,500 that was accounted for, as well as the special revenue fund. Because we discontinued the general fund expenditure of $28,500, we've absorbed that into item C for the liability insurance. And in doing so, we need to adjust what we levy for that line in order to ensure that we maintain at least 50% of a year's operating revenue in that line. So, to correct that, we are levying a little bit more in this line this year to ensure that we do have a sufficient fund balance for future fiscal years. And that is really the most substantive change to the way that we've crafted the levy this year, is the alignment of the funds in compliance with our policy.
Which you've mentioned before. Yeah.
Any questions about the levy document itself?
Do you just use round number? I mean, because I looked at Andrew Kim's, and then you just round with his document.
Right.
In the case you just rounded, like, for example, his document had 5,318,109. We just rounded to a nice 5,300,000 for the.
Kept it a little bit cleaner.
Yep.
You will notice there are in the in item 2, the personnel line, you'll see that those specific
Yes.
numbers there, we're levying for the actual expenses that we had for the previous fiscal year to ensure that we can cover our expenses there.
Great, thank you.
But the rest of them are all kind of whole numbers, as you can see.
And so, does this include salary increases of any sort?
In a sense, these are the total expenses for for personnel for the previous fiscal year is what's listed there. Expenses would be, the increases would be applied after that in July 1. It's an interesting formula, the way that we would create this. So, I mean, I think the other point that we need to keep in mind is that while the title of this document states that this is a levy for library purposes for fiscal year 22-23, that's the year in which we are approving this levy, these revenues actually will affect fiscal year 23-24. So yes, the number that's listed here actually under salaries, while that reflects the previous fiscal year, will actually look quite different by the time we get to the receipts of these revenues.
But it's our starting point.
But it's our starting point to ensure that we can at least sustain that level of operations that we had in the year that we approved this.
Mm-hmm. So for the next, I don't know the best way to do this. I'd like to get an idea if the board is comfortable, so that when we can put this out to the public for public comment, do we take is everyone comfortable? I don't know if we talk about it. Can everyone give
I
me their-
think we can just talk about it, because I think after the end of your finance committee meeting, you did a round,
Yes.
and so you
And
might
all of
wanna-
us were there.
And all of us
as
were
you've
there,
mentioned, yeah.
except for trustee Cox.
Yes.
And I would just like to say that I support the 4.99% levy for the following reasons. One, I think you've got inflation at 8%. We don't know what's going to happen with property taxes next year, given what happened this year. And I think if you look at employees and the availability of them, there've been sometimes it's hard to keep employees, and it's a competitive marketplace. And then I don't think you know what's going to happen in terms of inflation. It could go the same as next year. I won't be here in November, but I want to say that I support the 4.99% levy, because I think it's a good time to catch up to make sure that the library is stable and can provide the services that our community expects, as well as keep employees that provide that service.
I think I'm comfortable with a 3.5% increase or a 4.99%, 5% increase. I'm not comfortable with with a flat levy. We have experienced several years of experience of operating like that, and it's possible it will be, depleting our general fund balance within too short of a time frame. And, eventually it could cause future boards to reach into investment income, or like you said, at the worst case scenario, a tax referendum. So, the cushion, I don't want it to be as depleted as quickly or to a level that we would, kind of feel as poor stewards going forward. But I'm comfortable with 3.5% increase or a 4.99% increase.
And the board traditionally has, since I've been on it, has wanted to make sure that they never had to go to referendum, because the referendums can be quite expensive.
Was it just to do the referendum?
Yeah, to do the referendum and to get,
Okay.
because you've got to make your case, and
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of stuff involved
to
in
know.
it. And they could vote no.
Oh, that's
They could
true.
vote no.
Right, right.
I noticed that at the end of Andrew Kim's write-up here, in his conclusion, and I asked Tracy about this, where he says in the, under conclusion, third paragraph, where he says, it's, and I'll quote, furthermore, it may also be prudent to continue levying for the maximum amount allowable under PTEL in all future years, as well as in order to avoid burdening the library, as we've just talked about, in a financially untenable situation, burdening the library and our constituents. So
And
I
that
think
goes
that
right-
was his conclusion.
And that goes in line with the treasurer training that I went to when I first became a board member. They just assumed every board would always take the maximum amount that they could. And the fact that even we had done a flat two was surprising to them.
So I support the 4.99.
I do as well. I think it allows us to be good stewards of library resources and of the public.
But I think I'll just jump in because I agree on that point, good stewards. I think it's important that our messaging with to our Wilmette patrons have a clear message that why we're doing this, when we have been flat in the past, and all the reasons that we've mentioned, whether the inflation, employees, and so forth. I think that's crucial because everyone feels pinched, but we do too, and we are trying to be good stewards and look ahead. And yet, I think some people could feel that we're not. So I think messaging is going to be crucial with this.
I think it helps a lot. Andrew Kim's financial projection models, I think, really support the decision. And I think that's a great thing that they have done, that the library staff has done, to have him come aboard and show what the long-term impact of the decisions are. I think that's really been very valuable.
But messaging, whether it's off the shelf or Facebook or whatever, multiple approaches that we are very clear-cut about why we're doing this, since we haven't in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about that a little bit at the end of the finance committee meeting, that we could possibly use an excerpt from his model. We can use a
Bullet points
dollar
or
amount,
something
right.
that's, right, the dollar bill.
That
and-
dollar bill, that's
Right, which is
exactly
very
right.
instructive, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he has the top on how much.
He used an example of what it would be with an example of a tax bill, so I think
That's a great idea.
that might be helpful when you talk about the message.
And then you can also promote the calculator as to what they get for their taxes in terms of library services that's on there. And
On
maybe have,
on the library webpage.
on the library webpage, and then have 5 questions, answer 5 basic questions as to what we're levying for, what we can, and that for any, because there's a perception in the community when we did they assumed that during COVID there was big renovation, whereas most of the renovation was just getting the electrical getting the electrical
Tuck
up to snuff.
pointing or
Tuck
anything
pointing
that-
and mitigating that
Water.
basement, the water in the basement.
I
It's
didn't
just
know that.
basic maintenance. But there's a perception, and maybe do a timeline as to what those improvements have been, to show what those expenditures have been over 3 years.
Well, and the fact that the previous board did such a good job with their long-term capital reserve study, which I think also really lends itself to, it's in his models, but it really lends itself to know what our future expenses are.
Right.
Even before we do, whether we do a $3 million renovation, even if before that, where would we be with just the basic maintenance of the building?
Even our 20-year plan.
Exactly.
Right, right. Instructive, right. But Lisa, to your point, I agree, wasn't cosmetic with what we were doing when we were closed during this COVID.
Just
Crucial.
staying up to code.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Other comments?
Any other comments, questions?
And so go on.
Excuse me. I would be in favor of the 4.99% levy. What struck me with all of these materials is that even with it, we're looking at a depletion of our general fund projected in 2036, which is 14 years from now. We as a board and on behalf of the village, and we may not be here in 14 years, but we need to take care of our funds. We need to take care of our library. And we need to make sure that we are constantly forward-looking for the children who aren't here, but also for the families who will be moving in. So a 4.99% levy for me makes a lot of sense.
Well, the public will have a month to look at it, and then during the public comments section, they will have a chance to voice what their thoughts are.
And to that point, Anthony, how will it be presented to the public? Just kind of,
Online.
Just as it is here this evening.
okay.
Your report now?
Okay. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy. Well done.
Oh, and thanks to everyone for coming to the Finance Committee meeting. It makes this a lot easier.
And thank you for all your work. You go the extra mile with all of your work and your analysis. So thank you so much.
All right, now on to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the director's report for September. I did provide a few updates about September last month for some of the items that took place then, and I will kind of bridge September, October with some of my information here this evening. To close out September, which was known as National Library Card Sign-Up Month, I will start with talking a little bit about circulation. So for National Library Card Sign-Up Month, the library welcomed 198 new library card users, and 30 of those users originated from online applications. So we're really thrilled about that. I can say that in September, of the 13,303 library cards that have been active in the last 3 years, 10,626 were used for physical materials in the last year, which is 80% of our community has used their library card to check out physical materials at the library. That is a high rate of engagement. That is uncommon, I will say. So we're very thrilled about that high rate of engagement with physical materials. Keep in mind that a number of our patrons use the library exclusively for digital purposes. They may only use Overdrive or Canopy or those platforms. So we're really thrilled about that. On September 23rd, we saw one of our largest checkout days in a long time. We had 1,250 items that went out to 279 cardholders. We also had 20 District 39 school library cards that went out. So there are teachers that are actively using the library to collect materials for their classrooms. So we're really happy to have that partnership. In terms of collections in September, we always like talking about our Library of Things, which is enjoying a lot of growth right now. We added a portable film and slide digital scanner, a thermal FLIR camera, travel plug adapters.
Which I checked out.
When will you be back?
Oh, I returned them back immediately, and they were excellent. And I'm going to go buy my own set.
Cool.
It was good.
We like
It was a
that.
good set.
Check them out.
Try before you buy. And we also added a metal detector. So if you want to grab that and check out your backyard or the beach, we've got a metal detector now in the Library of Things. Other recent acquisitions that started circulating this past month include our karaoke machine. So I hope you all are having a karaoke party this fall. We have a vehicle code reader, so if you've got a check engine light and you don't know what that's all about, you can plug this device into your car and it will tell you all about what's going on, so you're a more informed person when you go to your mechanic. We have a USB webcam and, of course, a telescope. So check out our Library of Things website for more information about that. Also, on the line of collections, we've got a couple projects that are going on. We're working, if you're a biography reader and you like going to the 921s, there's been some inconsistency with the way that we've labeled those collections. We're working on a project to standardize all of those so that it's a lot easier to identify the subject that you're looking for. So the biographies are arranged by the subject individual. So you would just look them up by their last name and then their first name, but there's been a lot of variance in how those items have been cataloged over the years, so we're standardizing that. We're also working on updating our material merchandising inside the library. So you're going to see a focus more on sort of a retail style version of how we're promoting our collections. We've purchased a number of new book easels so that we can face out more of our materials. And that gives the staff an opportunity to talk the materials a bit more. And the materials can speak for themselves by merchandising them that way.
Is there an example of one that's already up?
They're all around the building. So as you tour through the stacks, you're going to see that we're trying at the end of every bookshelf to have the shelves be approximately 2/3 full so that there's enough room to face out an item that represents the items that are on that shelf. We've been doing that for quite some time, but we have actually the book easels themselves, which makes it a lot easier and also protects the material so that we're not breaking the spines on the books when we do that. So check that out. Overall, our physical material circulation is holding steady at about 91% of its pre-pandemic performance, which we think is fairly remarkable. We'd love to get back to where we were, so we're hoping that some of these merchandising and new collections that we're promoting are going to help get us back to where we were. Digital circulation accounts for about 40% of our circulation, which is an incredible metric. And again, this month, we're holding steady with the data that I reported to you all last month, that within the electronic consortium, which is our Overdrive consortium, we are still the 6th highest circulator of material, which is pretty impressive out of our 138 members, as we are the 27th highest in population size. So again, high rates of digital engagement with digital circulation per capita. That's it for collections. I did want to add that in September, we also celebrate Banned Books Week. That was September 18 through 24. And the theme of this year's campaign on intellectual freedom was Books Unite Us, Censorship Divides Us. You may know that Banned Books Week is an annual event celebrating our freedom to read. Public libraries across the nation celebrate Banned Books Week, and it was launched in 1982 in a response to a then sudden surge in the number of challenges to books in schools, bookstores, and libraries. It's typically held in the last week of September and highlights the value of free and open access to information. That's what public libraries stand for. Banned Books Week brings together the entire community, librarians, booksellers, publishers, journalists, teachers, and readers of all types to share in support of their freedom to seek and express their ideas, even some that they may consider unorthodox or unpopular. So both our youth and adult services departments created interactive books displays and book lists to support that campaign, and the library published a blog post and a book list on our website to help promote those collections. Our teen librarian, Krista Hutley, created a book river on the teen services page and posted quotations from authors about how challenges affect them on our Instagram channel. And we also had a number of interactive opportunities around the library for folks to engage and to share information with us about materials that have been challenged. So in adult services, you may have seen a whiteboard that was proximate to the recent arrivals desk, and it had a question on it. What book made you think about the world in a different way? And over 2 weeks, we had patrons who filled the board with titles and the books that had inspired them, and there's a picture of that in my report this month. We're continuing this conversation in November with the League of Women Voters Wilmette, as we're going to be having a discussion with them concerning books that have been recently challenged or banned. Let's see, what else can I share with you all? Really thrilled to report that our Adult Services Assistant Manager, Rachel Garcia, has received the excellent news this month that the library has been awarded a grant to participate in the Yiddish Book Center's 2023 Stories of Exile Reading Groups for Public Libraries program that we applied for this summer. That was brought to our attention by Trustee O'Keefe, who encouraged us to apply, and I thank you for encouraging us to apply.
Congratulations, that's great.
Thank you. So Rachel is going to be participating in a workshop at the Yiddish Book Center in Boston. They're going to fly her out in January, and the library will then host a series of book discussions over the course of the year, providing supporting programs that will explore experiences of diaspora, displacement, and migration through the lens of translated Yiddish literature. But we're also going to be able to expand that to include the experience of diaspora, displacement, and migration across all literature as part of that program. So we're really excited for that. In terms of programs this past month, one of our biggest programs was our partnership with the Illinois Library Presents series. We hosted Marlee Matlin, who spoke to an audience of more than 1,700 people over Zoom in recognition of Deaf Awareness Month. We're not the only library. As there weren't all Wilmette residents who participated, but a number of our residents did, and also participated in our first fan event. The Family Action Network is one of our recent programming partners, and we helped to sponsor an event that featured astrophysicist and folklorist Moya McTeer, who spoke about her book, The Milky Way, an autobiography of our galaxy. Speaking of programs, I wanted to mention that Youth Services had an amazing average of 27 attendees at each of their programs this past month, which is really impressive. A couple new services that launched in September. Digital Services is launching some really exciting new services. We have a laminator, thanks to the suggestion of staffer Ethan Hedrich. We've got a laminator down there that has been very popular since it's launched. We have a new VHS tape digitization system that has been very popular. We also have a digital slide and negative scanner. Those are all in the works right now, and coming up later, hopefully by the end of this month, we're hoping to see the deployment of our 3D printing service, as well as a brand new professional iMac station with the Adobe Creative Suite and more on that. So we're really excited about those new resources. Moving on, we are continuing our State Service Hours program. If you were here earlier today, on the third Tuesday of every month, We are hosting state and federally elected officials who hold 90-minute office hours in the vestibule of the library for constituents to connect with representatives about issues that immediately affect them. So we're thrilled to be able to offer that. From the IT side of things, the new file server that you all approved earlier this year is finally going to go live next week. We're really excited about that. And our new Wi-Fi network received a bandwidth boost this week, so our performance is a little bit faster now on our brand new Wi-Fi network. From the facilities standpoint, just a couple more updates to share. The library is coordinating with the village to install a village grant-funded electric vehicle charging station along the north side of the building. We expect to receive that equipment here within the next couple weeks. And then when our electrician installs that service, they're also going to concurrently rough in the electrical for our brand-new 24/7 outdoor lockers that you approved last month, which is going to go in the same proximate area over there. So we're thrilled about that. We also have some recently updated safety cameras on the exterior of the building that promote clearer visibility of the parking lot and grounds. And lastly, facilities staff is researching an upgrade and replacement of our current snow blower in anticipation of the winter months. It is coming. It's a cold day today. Staff is evaluating our options right now for that implement, and it literally is an implement because we're looking for something that's going to be a little bit more substantial than what we have right now, and hopefully something that we can use to help clear the perimeter and do a bit more perimeter maintenance. The village has an implement that it does bring around, but we're obviously concerned about ensuring access to the facility. So we want to maybe help the village out with that, as we did have a little bit of damage to our gardens on the south side of the building because of the size of their equipment. If we maintain it ourselves, maybe we can reduce some of that damage as well. This would potentially be a capital eligible resource, so I'm anticipating that we're going to have a proposal to share with you next month about this, so I'll keep you posted about that. The last item that I want to share with you all is from the human resources side of things. I have a bit of actually exciting news to share with you, although it's also kind of bittersweet for us. Our adult services manager, Jill McEwen, has made the decision to return to her librarian roots. She's made the decision to transition from her manager role to a brand new senior services librarian position. In this new position, Jill is going to be focusing on developing and expanding programming and outreach services to our growing senior community. Jill was faced with the opportunity of this position as the manager. She was developing the job description, and as she was working on it, she did a little soul searching and said, gee, this is kind of my dream job here. She approached us about that and said that she would like to have us explore that opportunity with her, and so we are doing that. So right now we are advertising for a new adult services manager as Jill continues in her current capacity as manager, and she will then help to cross-train that new person when they come on board. That position is open through the end of this month, and we anticipate with timing and everything that we probably wouldn't see that new manager begin until sometime in December, at which time Jill would then start training that new individual and then take on full-time her new role as the senior services librarian. So we congratulate Jill on her new role, and we look forward to seeing a new member on our leadership team here soon. Do you all have any questions for me about my report?
I'm going to make two comments, as I mentioned to you. The new VHS tape digitalization, my husband's been over here using it. It is wonderful. You know, we have old VCR tapes that are just, so they're from our kids when they were babies. I didn't even know it was on. So it's great. And the other thing I want to say is, I know we have this new thing that lists how much the services cost. And I did want to comment, which I mentioned to you. A young man popped into Books Down Under the other day. Probably not loud enough. Books Down Under. He loves the Gale programs, and I didn't know anything about them. So there's Gale for You, which are online classes that you can take. He's taking a guitar class. You can take Spanish. They're free. You just watch them on your computer. So something that, as a board member, yeah, it was, he was very enthusiastic.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, the Gale Udemy
Yes,
platform. Yep.
So
And then I wonder, oh, I'm sorry, Tracy.
I think it should be promoted more. I don't know how, but I think it's something that it's there.
I'm excited to hear about the charger for one
One vehicle.
vehicle.
Yep.
Okay. Will that take up, I was thinking when you said north side, so does that take up just one parking space?
One parking space.
Okay. So,
Right now, the library van, which is also an electric vehicle, has its own dedicated charging station. And then immediately to the west of that are two spaces that are dedicated for our parking lot pickup service,
right.
which is going to be sunsetted once we launch the 24/7 lockers. This charging station for the public will go adjacent to that, proximate to that location. So,
okay.
and then we'll have signage that will note it as a designated charging station.
I don't have an electric car, but I just, in a nutshell, how does that work? How do you know if someone is there parking all day, or did you get a card? Maybe people who have electric cars know how this works.
So my son has one, and you basically just pull in, you pull the cord out, you plug your car in. I think if someone was there for hours, somebody who was waiting for it would probably come in and say, is it going to be a fast charge?
I'm not sure. I can't speak
I don't
to
know
what.
the things are.
yeah.
So, if you have a quick charge, I know very little, but if you have a quick charge, you can do it fairly, within an hour or two. If it's just a regular charge, it can take a little bit longer. But for anyone that has an electric car, to be able to pull in, plug
Oh,
in
for
for an
sure.
hour
Right.
is such a great benefit.
Right.
It is a wonderful thing.
I just don't want, I don't know if it will be monitored, how it will be maintained, monitored in the sense that will someone from the community, and understandably so, park all day, if that's feasible. But that's to be determined.
Yep,
TBD.
we'll handle it on a case-by-case
Right.
basis.
Very
Yep.
good. Great, I think that's it.
Yeah, we're glad that we can put it in that location, because anywhere else in the lot, it would actually, a single charging station could take up multiple parking spaces.
Right.
If you see them at like the grocery store, for example, they take up a lot more space than that. So we're glad that we can put it in that spot.
Great, great, that's wonderful.
Anthony, do people use the vans ever? Do you find that anybody reaches in to kind of temporarily use the van's charging spot?
We've had that happen.
Yeah, I was
I
wondering.
was so wondering, because I was like,
The
my
way to the
son came
train
in-
sometimes, I always wonder if people use them.
Yeah. But it's intended for the van and
Yeah.
the van only, but now we'll have one for the public.
Nice. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have one thing. You mentioned September 23rd was our highest checkout?
In a
Was-
while,
did I-
because it was a day that the school was closed.
Oh, school was
To
closed.
the point
Okay, I was
earlier.
thinking, what day was
So-
that? What day of the week? And school was closed. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you. That's exciting.
Oh, also, the first art exhibit will be down here in a couple of weeks, and it's in photos of the 150th. And then following that, New Trier students will be doing something in honor of nature. And that's not the right word, but and so that'll be for 2 weeks, too. There's a reception for the photo exhibit. There's not a reception for the students, because we didn't think the teacher didn't think the students would attend.
When is has a date been determined?
It was, the Wilmette Village had an announcement. I don't know the exact date, but it was
Okay.
in the village sent out an announcement. What is it, second week, in about 2 weeks?
I'll clarify it and
Yeah,
send it
yeah,
out to you all,
send
but
it
you
out.
I
Yeah,
noticed the
look for our
communicator
communications.
just was in my mailbox today, so I'll look for that.
It was online. I know they sent me an
Oh,
online
okay.
notice, but I don't remember.
And it'll be in our weekly email
Nice.
newsletters as well. It's going to be great to see this room filled with art again, because we used to have a rotating, this is our rotating gallery, so it'll be nice to have that, our first exhibit in a couple of years.
I have a question about the piano. There used to be a grand piano. Is it still here?
Behind you.
Oh, my God. It's the last, my son had a recital here back in the day.
Okay, do you have anything for?
I don't,
Okay.
and intergovernmental-wise, I know, Anthony, you put the date of the meeting in an email, but it was like with some other information, so I can't remember it right now. Can you?
Is it November 2nd?
Is it?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
November 2nd.
There you go.
Okay.
thank you.
Do you have, Director Austin, anything regarding rails?
Um,
or ILA?
Let's see, Rails is looking for a new executive director. There's a national search going on for that position right now following the retirement of Dee Brennan. So there was a survey that we participated in for the consultants to help inform what traits we're looking for in our new leader for the system. I guess the only other point that I want to add is I did send a separate note to you all last week that there is a workshop that is coming up hosted by parliamentarian Nancy Sylvester. Lisa and I went to a program from Ms. Sylvester at the Schaumburg Library a couple of years ago. It's called Keys to Being a Better Library Trustee. It's a two-part webinar series that begins on October 29th and will continue on Saturday, November 12th. And I sent out information along the lines of that, so if you're interested, you can self-register via the L2 calendar, or you can let me know and I can help you out with that too.
It's easy to sign up. I did today.
We did
Thank you.
a workshop with her last year, too.
Very good.
It was good.
Can I do
Do you know
a
who-
report too? I was on the Friends, I went with the Friends, went to the Friends meeting. I just want to announce that they're going to do a pop-up, thanks to Anthony, they're going to do a pop-up holiday sale on Saturday, December 3rd. They're going to try to, hope I'm saying this right, try to have like good, like take out their good books so that you could do, with inflation and everything, you could come in and buy a book as a gift. So there'll be, if it's not too cold, it'll be out front, but it will be on Saturday, December 3rd.
Nice.
Come, shop, support your library.
Okay. Any other, okay, it's now time for communication. Any communication?
I circulated some
I have it
comments
here.
here.
I
Put it
thought one
in.
that caught my eye because it was very popular was the coffee machine. Just wondering. And
Somebody has to clean it up.
additional bike racks. I sometimes bike, but I've never noticed that it's full, but this patron says that the bike racks have been full.
Sometimes they can be, yeah. So we'll have to evaluate that. And I have had it on my long list of things that I'd like to accomplish, to add a bike rack somewhere where staff can park their bikes as well. So maybe that would help free up the front if we could provide a little bit of space in the back of the building for staff that are commuting. So we'll look at that. Yep.
You want to pass them along?
Oh, I thought it ended.
We haven't seen 'em over here.
We haven't
Started
seen 'em.
here. I didn't mean to hog it.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion? Any new business? Okay. No new business?
No new business.
Okay. And you might want to say, Tricia, because you talked briefly about the intergovernmental. They're going to be working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you're our two representatives at this point in time. Okay, thanks. Okay. Being that there's no additional business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that the board adjourn this meeting at, what have we got here? 7:54.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.